Hey, what's happening, everybody? My name is Haydn Adams with A Designer That Codes. I come from a design background, and to me, code is secondary to design, but in order to design, I have to code. And one of the best tools out there in the world right now is Gatsby. Gatsby to me is my favorite tool to use to create beautiful, rich, and fast websites. But at first glance, all it does, it just says fast in every way that matters. And to get started, it has this documentation. And at first glance, I got lost. And so what I want to do in this video is I want to walk you through how to use Gatsby for the very, very first time and break down every single step as best that I can in order for you to be very comfortable using Gatsby JS. And with that, let's get started. All right, so welcome back. We are on the Gatsby JS documentation page. I will tell you there are times in the video when you have to stop and download external software. So you might have to do this in a couple different stage batch increments. Let's actually go to the tutorial section. Let's follow the actual steps, and I'll talk about each one as I go along. So in coding, you notice how step one is actually 0. That's a geek thing, because when you actually start counting numbers, 0 is actually your first number. We're used to thinking 1 is, but when it comes to programming, 0 is actually your first step. And so developers use 0 as the literal first step. Once again, this is written from a development standpoint, and I want to take it into a design linguistics as best as possible. The first thing to do is use the command line. This looks scary. Why? Because, let me close and reopen that one. Let's make it a little bigger. Whoa, hello code. Also, if you do notice, I am just hitting Command plus and Command minus to make my type bigger and smaller. The terminal looks daunting. Why? Because if we're used to using Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, it just looks empty. My last logged in at 8:32. Yes, I am on the East Coast doing this in the morning. And it just says Haydn's MacBook Pro and Haydn 5. What do I do with that? That's a good answer, or good question, and I'm going to answer that down the road. I'm using a free piece of software called iTerm2. It's used for the Macintosh, and it's just what it says. It does amazing things. I kind of laugh because you have to know what it does in order for it to do amazing things. A lot of this code at first is just foreign concepts until we put them into practice. So what I recommend you doing is pausing this video and downloading iTerm2 and then coming back after you have the software open, and it looks like that, as we are going to come back to that. All right, that is the first piece of software we're going to have to install in order to use Gatsby JS. Now also, just so you know, that every time we install something, we don't have to keep reinstalling it. This is a one-time setup process. If we scroll down the page, our next thing is to install the Node.js for your appropriate operating system. What this does, and I also do recommend, since we are on a Mac, that we use Homebrew. Now that we have this terminal in place, what I can do is open the terminal, number 1. So actually this isn't step 0 anymore, this is step 1. In here I can open the terminal, which I have right here, and I've already installed this, so I'm not going to do it twice, but I'm going to type. Notice how it's in this kind of cream color right here. See if Homebrew is installed by running brew. Let me move this over here. And I'm going to type in brew-v. It's going to see if this brew is installed on my machine by typing -v for version. And it's going to take a little bit longer, but there it is. Homebrew is installed on my computer. It's version 2.1.10. You should see Homebrew and a version number, which I do. If not, you're going to want to download and install Homebrew with these instructions. Once you've installed Homebrew, you're going to want to do this again. This is the time again where you want to stop my video and go download Homebrew and come back once you've done steps 2 and 4. So hopefully by now you've installed Homebrew and you've run the brew-v on your computer and you found that it gave you Homebrew version something. Now once again, you might have a slightly different number than mine because your version might be different than my version. The important part is it's installed and we're all set to go. The next thing you have to do is install Xcode command line tools. You can do this one of two ways. You can type Xcode -select --install, or this is the visual side of me coming out. I just go up to the App Store and up in the search box, I am running Catalina, so this might look a little different depending upon what you're working on. So in the search box, I'm going to type Xcode. I think it's lowercase. Oh, anyways. Xcode, there it is. I already have it installed, so to me, I just have to click on open. But just so you know, let me see if I can find the file size. This is a large file. It is 7.8 gigabytes big. Translation, you're probably going to want to stop the video, go get a cup of coffee while it installs. Here's the thing though. Don't forget after you, where'd it go? Where is Xcode? There it is. Notice that it's a 16.2 gigabyte file. It is massive. And here's the important step I want you to do. When you run Xcode, make sure you run it for the first time. Now mine won't say this because I already installed it. Oh, I'm going to do it again. So keep in mind that you will have to install some additional components. Make sure you run this at all times. I'm not quite sure why. I must have updated my software a couple of days ago. Anyways, make sure you run the installing components just to make sure everything's installed properly. This is the only time we actually have to use Xcode in our journey. Xcode runs in the background. It doesn't really do anything for us besides do some internal combustion engines. So for me, it just sits there and I actually don't have to actually use Xcode. But it is part of the development process because when we actually build our website using Gatsby, it kind of runs the engine. It's like a spark plug in your car. Yes, the pistons actually drive the car, but you got to get the car started. And that's kind of where your spark plug comes in. Unless you have a Tesla or like an i3, then all of this, of course, is moot because there are no spark plugs. But a typical combustion engine requires a spark plug in order for this to work. And this is where Xcode comes in. It just runs in the background, and without it, everything will not work on the Macintosh. I'm not quite sure why this is going on still, but you know, I'm going to let this thing run. And again, I just have to keep downloading more and more content. This will take 20 to 30 minutes. So if you are in a hurry, don't do this. But I always recommend running in the morning, going to get a cup of coffee, checking email, doing something else, let it run in the background, and then once you're done, run it for the first time. Make sure everything's installed properly. The one thing I also forgot to do was once I forgot to click the agreement tab for the first time running the software, and the software never ran. And then when I did all this other work, it kept giving me error messages. So I do recommend running Xcode just once, and it just sits in the background, and that's it. After being prompted to start the installation, prompt again to accept a software license for tools to download. That number 3 step I forgot to do. I did a tutorial maybe about a month ago where I erased Xcode and I downloaded it just to make sure I did it correctly, and I hopped over number 3, and all of a sudden I was like, why is this not working? All of a sudden, I couldn't get it to work, and I realized I forgot to actually accept a software license for the tools to download. This is still taking a little while longer. We'll just kind of let this thing run in the background. I know it's going to work fine, but it just required an update apparently in the background. This is what I was trying to get a minute ago, and I had to pause the video because it took so much longer to install that version. I'm on Xcode 11.3.1 as of this recording. Again, I'm not too worried about the version number as long as you have Xcode running on your system. So Xcode, about Xcode, it just sits here. Make sure you accept a license agreement. And after that, you can quit Xcode and put it to the side. Again, it's a 7.6 gigabyte download. When it installs extra components, mine went up to 16 point something gigabytes. That's pretty darn big. So this one does take a little while to actually run, but once you're done, it's finished. You're finished. The next thing we have to install is called Node or Node.js. JS stands for JavaScript. This runs in the background and makes everything work. Again, I'm trying to think of a great analogy with car engines. I guess Gatsby's the car and Node now is actually the pistons. We have the spark, Xcode. We have Node.js that is actually the pistons. And the wheels make us move, but the Node drives everything in the background. Again, this is background. Once you set it up once, you're done. You can do two things. I can Brew install Node. Again, everything with this little cream colored box translates to typing inside of the terminal. I could type Brew install Node, hit return, and it installs. If you're still not loving the terminal, or you're like, I don't know about this, all you have to do is go to nodejs.org and download the latest version for macOS x64. If I click on that, you can do current or recommend most users. This will download the software, run in the background, and we're good to go. Again, this is just a one-time setup. After that, we're all done. So again, if we go back and forth, we have to kind of do the homebrew. We have to do Xline command tools, or just download Xcode and install Node. Again, I'm using a Macintosh, so I'm not focusing on the Windows installation. But for the Windows side, you can just run it off the official Node.js website. Stop the video, install Node, and come back and we'll continue. All right, hopefully you've now installed Node. We continue forward. For Windows, it also gives us for Linux instructions, which we're not going to touch, or Ubuntu, Debian, and other apt-based distros or distributions. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Setting default Node version, we installed the latest version, so we're okay there. But it never hurts if you want to run something and say npm-version, which I have at 6.13.7, so a little newer version than this video down below. And I ran node version 10.15-3. This is node 17, but as long as it's version 10 or above, we are good. They must update their video, and I haven't run my latest update. But again, as long as I'm version 10, I'm all set to go. Going forward, we have to install Git. Git is actually a really cool tool, and we're going to use GitHub. It's actually a very, very powerful tool. When you look at it, it's like, whoa, I'm confused. But after we do it once before, it's actually really easy to do. So once again, I do recommend downloading Git. Come on. And again, notice how these command lines come in. If I say git --version, I have version 2.21.1. You just have to do this once. That's all we have to do. Download this git for Mac installer, follow the prompts, and then run the version. If you're noticing, you're typing a lot of terminal code already. That's the cool part. And the best part about this is if I mess it up, so if I say git, and for some reason I want to type 4 dashes, it's like, dude, it doesn't work. It's an unknown option. It's like you can run no replace, work tree, git dir, paginate, and all the different areas, but it doesn't have a --, version. So the great part about it is if you screw up, it tells you screwed up. That's kind of the reason why I like about programming is it really gives you a yes or no answer when it comes to these specific codes. So you do have to install Git. I'm going to close Node and install Git. Yes, there's a lot of installation to be had, but again, once you do this once, you're done. You don't have to worry about it. That's the great part about it is. I'm going to stop the video for a second and come back to the next step. And I do recommend you pause the video to install Git. All right, we are almost done with the installations of using terminals. Man, this is a lot of work at first. I get it, it's a lot to set up, but again, once I do all these steps, the next part just gets that much easier. It's almost like when you build a computer or you get something for the first time, building an engine in a car takes a lot of work. But once the engine's built, you just drive it. So in a car, think about all those manufacturers that built the car. This is the same situation. The setup takes a little while, but once you're all set, you can just start rocking and rolling. The next step is I have to install the Gatsby CLI. Now, when you do see CLI, all that means is it's a command line interface. What's a command line interface? That's a command line interface. You've been typing CLI the entire time. So what I have to do is, in order to install Gatsby, I'm going to type install-G. Now, G stands for global. And what this means is this will run on your entire computer. Global in terms of your entire computer versus a local or a certain project that I'm working on. So if I want to install this global, it goes into your computer, into your library, and sits there and runs in the background. I'm going to type in install-G and then Gatsby CLI. When you run this, what's going to happen is it's going to install everything and then give you a whole bunch of commands that we get to use down the road. These are going to be very, very powerful tools to use going forward. Again, you're going to hear me say this. Pause the video, install the Gatsby CLI, and then come back when you're finished. Welcome back. Hopefully you stopped the video and you installed Gatsby. I can check to make sure mine's running by saying Gatsby-V. And it'll tell me what version of Gatsby I'm running in. So I've got Gatsby V, and notice it also has a new version. This is also important to note. Now on a Macintosh, you have to do something very unique. I'm going to copy this. This is the cool part about software installation I love about this. Instead of going up to the App Store, clicking Update, all I have to do is I have to copy and paste this. So I'm going to copy, run npm install global Gatsby CLI. But on a Macintosh, I have to type one more little piece, and that's sudo. Sudo enables me to install something on my Macintosh using a password, because the Unix system on a Mac, without getting too technical, requires a password to install. So I'm going to say sudo paste npm I g Gatsby CLI. Hit return, maybe, and it asks for my system-wide password. Now, if I type it in, you can't see what it is. I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to let this thing run because I have to go from system 2.7.9 to version 2.8.3. Ignore all these pieces. It gives you a bunch of warnings for NPM warns. I'll let this thing run in the background as I keep talking because this might take a little while depending upon what I'm doing. And I'm also pushing some files on Dropbox, so my system's not running the fastest when it comes to download speed at this given time. This will pop up every so often, just so you know. Anytime you have some system-wide runnings, you're going to have updates available. All I want to do is type sudo npm I g, and it'll tell me. And just like that, it installed. That's pretty darn cool. Welcome to Gatsby CLI. Please visit Gatsby JS docs Gatsby CLI for more information, which we're looking at right here. Kind of cool. And again, I can say Gatsby -- version, and now it'll show me that before, where did I go? I ran 2.8.3, and it is, I don't know what happened, 2.7.9. Maybe something didn't run, but in their effect, 2.0, there it is. So we're good. So what I want to do next, after all this kind of pieces right here, is we're all good on this situation. And I'm now ready to create a Gatsby site. Yes, all of this for just creating a Gatsby site. Whew, take a breather, get some more coffee, and give yourself a little pat on the back. You've made it through this entire documentation process, and now we're ready to run a Gatsby site. So let's do just that. All right, let's actually create a Gatsby site. But here's the thing. There's no download button to create a Gatsby site. All it is this wonderful terminal. And just for the sake of cleanliness, I'm going to create a new terminal. I did Command W, Command T, and I'm hitting Command plus just to make the type a little bit bigger on your screen. Now, this is where we get all into the terminal and commands. I'm going to move this up so it's not running a little piece down there. You are now ready to use the Gatsby CLI tool to create your first Gatsby site. Using the tool, you can download starters, partially built, blah, 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 blah. We're going to use the Hello World starter from the very beginning. Here's the thing. I'm not just going to type Gatsby new Hello World just yet, because I want to get into a little bit about the terminal. I created a folder on my computer that's in my Haydn 5 folder, the Dropbox folder, because I do use Dropbox, and then I create a folder called Gatsby Demo Projects. If you look at your terminal, mine says Haydn 5. That's the root level of the terminal. I can't go any lower when it comes to terminal. Otherwise, we get into more super admins and stuff like that. And for security reasons, the terminal stops here on a default level. So what I'm going to do is I have to change the directory to go into the Gatsby Demo Projects folder, because this is where I want this project to live. So what I want to do is, as I just said, I want to change the directory or change directory. I'm going to say cd space. Now, when it comes to the computer or the Macintosh, capital letters make a difference. Note how Dropbox is capital. And also, this folder doesn't contain any spaces. That's because now we're using actual code to move through our site. I'm going to say cd and dr. If I hit the tab button, it fills in Dropbox. That's because the only name, let me go back into Haydn 5. If you look at it, the only file that's named starting with dr is Dropbox. If I were to go back and type capital D, it'll tell me if I hit the tab key that there's 4 files named capital D, capital D, capital D, and capital D. You can install things on the desktop, but my advice is put it in a folder where you know where it is. This is now getting into file management. So if I type dr, hit tab, get rid of that little extra dash, Dropbox /, if I hit the return key, now I'm in Dropbox. So Haydn 5 is the root level of the folder, and Dropbox is now what I'm going to be in. But I want to go back into this project. So I'm now inside my Dropbox folder. I want to go into Gatsby Demo Projects. I'm going to type in cd and Gatsby, mine's lowercase, dash or tab key for this one, hit return. Now I'm in the Gatsby Demo Projects folder that starts with Haydn 5 as my user. If I went too far, I went into the wrong one, I can type in cd ... That means go back one folder level. So, cd space ... My bad. There we go. If I type cd ... or cd space ... it goes back into my Dropbox. And if I type cd space ... now I'm back on my root level of Haydn 5. This is how you can go in and out of folders. It's really, really cool. This is what I mean by getting familiar when the very, very beginning up here. Familiarize yourself with the command line. Rule number 0 in so many ways, or rule number 1 when it comes to Gatsby. Get used to this command line, because we're going to spend all of our time at the very beginning right here working in the command line interface or CLI. So if I go back down, create a Gatsby site, there we go. I'm going to go back into the Gatsby Demo Projects folder. I'm going to type cd space dr tab for my Dropbox. And then since it put a slash for a new folder name, I can type Gatsby tab to fill the rest of the code in, Gatsby demo projects folder. And now what I have is an empty space in order to put my folder name. I'm going to copy and paste this. So what this does is opening up my terminal, which I'm right here. I'm in the correct folder name of run Gatsby new hello world https://github, all this piece is right here. What this does is if I paste this in, let's review what this says. We're going to run something new in Gatsby. It is new, and we're going to create a folder name called hello world. We're going to pull files or clone them from GitHub at this website. And just so you see it, I'll do a little copy paste here. GitHub looks like this. Again, from a designer standpoint, I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff going on here. But it's actually pretty straightforward once we break it down and get used to it. And we'll start getting to this in another actual demo. But for right now, what we're doing is we're just going to pull or clone this actual URL into our project. Let's do just that. And let me pull this one up and close that and close that, just so you can see what's going on. So here's my Gatsby demo projects and my Gatsby demo projects. Hit the return key, and what's going to happen is a whole bunch of files will be created. Now I am running Dropbox, so you will see those little blue dots on my screen. It's up here as well. It's just running the background. So ignore the Dropbox piece. It just runs because we are going to install a lot of files. Let this whole thing run. This is the great part. We literally are just about to have a website. It did take a little while to install, but the great part about this is once you get through all this part, now you're cooking with gas. Now we're moving this car forward. This is actually where we actually push the ignition button. We step on the gas. If we're using all my car analogies, and I'm not even a car guy. That's kind of the funny part is I do drive a BMW, but overall I'm pretty much happy what's going on. Also on my screen right here, my Yarn version is out of date. Latest version is 1.2.2. So I should run an upgrade to curl compressed. Let me run this one piece right here. Just because I do want to run these pieces. Whenever I see to upgrade, run this kind of piece, I just do it because I don't want to forget to do it in the first place. Yours is probably going to be fine. So again, you probably won't have this problem because I've already had a previous version installed. And we're good. GPU is not installed. Verified. That's fine. Successfully installed to Yarn 1.22. Please in a terminal where Yarn command will be now available. We are actually using Yarn versus NPM, which we'll get into down the road. But what I like to do is, since all this stuff is here, let's close the terminal and open up a new terminal. And we actually can run our site for the very, very first time. All those previous things we did now got us to running our website. So how do we run this site? Let me close the App Store and go this one. If we look at this hello world, what we have are node modules and circs, or I call them sorcs versus sources, our static files. It doesn't know what to do. So by default, it tells us what to do. So if we follow past what just happened, if we did that, this created a whole new world in our folder. Now note that there is a brand new folder name called Hello World. So, I closed it. Oh well. If I say cd Dropbox / Gatsby, we have to follow the rabbit down this path. Haydn 5, Dropbox, Gatsby demo projects, and now I want to go into Hello World. So I'm going to type H because there's only one folder right here. And this is where I get to live. This is where all the magic happens in a Gatsby project. All right here. And if you want to see some extra cool stuff, Command-Shift-, shows some invisible files as well. But for right now, let's just hide those invisible files. What just happened? Lastly, GitHub URL. So I did a CD into Hello World. I just did it with the Dropbox, the Gatsby demo projects, and Hello World previously. This says I won't change directories to Hello World whenever I want to run the commands. So now what I want to do is I want to say Gatsby develop. And this is going to pre-compile all of your code that Gatsby gave us. It's going to run validate, maybe. Takes a few minutes the first shot. Again, I might be running things in the background, so it's not going to run perfectly, but check it out. I did it. I'm done. But where's my website? What does it look like? What country am I in? This is not my beautiful house. And if you are a Grateful Dead, if you are a Talking Heads fan, you hopefully got my joke. Anyways, localhost. Here's the cool part about the terminal. By default, I can't click on this HTTP://. If I hold the command key down and I roll my mouse over it, magic happens. Check it out. All this work for Hello World. Oh, it's like a letdown in a little bit. But then again, you did some cool magic. Let's go and edit this word Hello World, or phrase Hello World. Hello World is an old phrase in JavaScript that it's almost like the hello on the Macintosh became Hello World in JavaScript. I'm not sure who created it, but it just became the de facto starting word. So how do we change this? If you're used to writing any kind of HTML and CSS, you're going, well, where the heck are my files? They live in the circ folder or source. I've been calling it circ ever since the dawn of time. If you ever watch a video where I say image source, then you're going to hear me say image circ. That's just how I do things. It's hooked on phonic style and going forward. So in the circ folder, you're going to find a folder called pages. And in the pages folder, there's an index.js. Now there's one more piece of software I want to show you to. And if you're on a Mac, you're first going to go, what the bleep? And I haven't changed this, so I don't want to have any curse words because I have to tell YouTube what I just said. So I'm going to search for one more piece of code, and it's called Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is actually my favorite coding piece of software. It's made by Microsoft. Yes, you heard me right. I cannot make this up. Visual Studio Code is developed by the Microsoft Corporation. I would run any time of the day and say, I'm really going to use software by Microsoft. I use Google Sheets and Pages. If I can help it, I don't touch PowerPoint. I don't touch Word. I don't touch Excel. But this kind of blew my mind when someone told me that Visual Studio Code is the best coding software. And it's free. It's free. That to me is incredible. So once again, put your whole feelings aside. If you're an old Mac user who's like, Microsoft, don't get me started in the Bungie world of Marathon. And anyway, that's dating myself back there. I digress. Okay, Visual Studio Code right here. So if I click on it, it is also code.visualstudio.com. Download for Mac, and we are rocking and rolling. I'm going to use this tool right here for everything I do when it comes to coding. So if we get back, I'm going to hide my browser, and I'm back to Pages on this piece, and index, I'm going to run with Visual Studio Code. That's all the code. That's all there is. Import React from React. Export default, hello world. Now how this code basically works, if I move it this way and this way, is everything between these divs is just HTML with a JavaScript and CSS twist. It's a new language called JSX. And at first glance, I was like, oh my gosh, one more language. But as I got deeper and deeper into the code, the easier and easier it was. I come from a design standpoint, and so anything that is like dot underscore blah, 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 I get lost with. I like visual clues. So to me, this is really, really powerful. And it's also great because if I screw this up, that little terminal tells me I've screwed up. And I'll show you what I mean by it. Let's save this. It's going to rebuild and say success. If I type a piece of code and I say paragraph, and I say, you know what? I messed this up on purpose. I have an open paragraph, but I didn't close the paragraph. Oh, big mammoth error. Generating development JavaScript bundle failed. Notice we just wrote HTML, just a p tag, but it told me I failed. That's in some ways, ouch, that hurt. But it also tells me that it's undetermined JSX contents. Again, this is JavaScript or JSX disguised as HTML, but it is HTML. So here's how I fix it. If I take out hello world and I say P for paragraph, this is a paragraph. Your first Gatsby edit. And note now I have an open P and a close P. If we go back before I save this, and in Visual Studio Code, the little dot means it's not saved, and the whole site broke. Notice how this error message in your terminal reflects the error message right here. But here's the cool part, and this is my favorite part. Let me see if I can put these in the right spot. Let's put this here, this over here, and this. What I'm going to do is save my index.js file. I'm going to save it successfully rebuilt it in 1.137 seconds, and it automatically showed my new change. This is a paragraph. I think that is the inaccurate version. This should say your, not you are. Yeah. It should say your first Gatsby edit. And that is how, through all that different pieces of code, you're able to build a website using Gatsby JS. That to me is very, very, very powerful. Now we're almost done with this. We're going to take it for a little bit further. And if you've gone this far, congratulations, you are probably on your second cup of coffee by now, maybe your third. And you're going, oh my God, I just ran the terminal. This is amazing. Get used to this terminal. It really will help you in a lot of ways become a better designer online through coding. So view your site locally, localhost 8000. We did this. That is amazing. Again, congrats. Even they put a little emoji. This is the beginning of your first Gatsby site. Awesome. And once again, what we already did was download VS Code, and we're rocking and rolling in this piece. So what's the next step? What I have to do? Well, that's a good question. The real trick we're going to do is to make this site really work is we have to do a Gatsby build. And I'll show this piece. If you're happy where you are right now, you can stop the video. But if you want to finish the last couple of steps, then awesome. So what I want to do is that I'm going to hit Control C. And that stops the actual Gatsby develop. Now, when I hit Control C, everything stops. that localhost 8000, when I refresh, failed. Because it's almost like you started your development server and then you stopped the development server. So the Control C is how we stop it from running. So just to refresh one more time, Gatsby develop launches, maybe, take a little longer right here. It'll launch our localhost 8000, and that'll show us how our site looks as if we're going to build it. The reason why this is very, very, very powerful is Gatsby won't let you build a project unless it's built properly. It's like, hey man, you forgot the door in the house. Maybe you forgot a door on a car, since we're still with the car analogy. So to me, that's really, really cool, and it's a success. Refresh the page, and we're back to our first Gatsby edit. Now, we can't just launch this website into the universe. We actually have to do what it tells us to do, because again, Gatsby's pretty smart. Note that the development build is not optimized. To create a production build, a production means you can use it, use Gatsby Build, and notice it's in turquoise. So what I want to do is I'm going to run Gatsby Build. Control C. So what I want to do next is I'm going to say Gatsby Build. And what it's going to do, if we go back to our little screen right back here, is, and I forgot to pull it up at the same time, there is a folder that's going to be created called static. And this is where, again, all the magic happens. While this is running in the background, I'm going to go back to Gatsby on the very, very first page. And here's what I mean by static. I'm sorry, not static. Let's go to public. That's better. I screwed that up. I'm sorry. Static is a whole different piece with a favicon ICO. What I'm looking for is a public folder. This is the folder that just got added. So when I ran all these pieces right here, it said building a static HTML for pages. And what I did was, if we go full circle all the way around, notice that what it did is we spent time in this area for data sources. We did our own little piece. We didn't write any posts or Drupal or WordPress. We just did this. But then we ran, if we look at it, Gatsby Build. And the Gatsby Build, powered by GraphQL, which we'll get into later on, built us an HTML, CSS, and React piece of code. And we can look at it by actually running or going into public. Now, there's a whole bunch of other files in here, but again, your first page of any website is index.html. And there is our first website we built from Gatsby. I know, it's one sentence, and that's all we did through this entire process, but now we can do so much more. So let me show you how to actually launch this website. So if we go back to this home page right here, fast in every way that matters. How Gatsby works. Pull data from everywhere. We did the build. If we go back right here, we ran Gatsby Build, and it's built successfully. Now I want to do the last step right here, and that's deploy it. I'm going to do this right here on deploy, and I'm going to use the first web hosting option, Netlify. You'll find Netlify to be one of your favorite tools, and in future videos, I'll get more into how Netlify makes Gatsby shine. So I'm going to command click on Netlify. And in here, deploying Netlify, it'll tell us a couple things, but I'm going to go right to Netlify, which is netlify.com. Here what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign up for an account. Now, just so you know, it is free. There is no cost to deploy a basic project unless you go over, 100 gigabytes of bandwidth per month. This file is so small, we're not going to hit it. Don't worry about it all. So just so you know that there is no cost to sign up for Netlify. So What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on sign up, or in my case, I have already done this before, so I'm going to log in. And I have a bunch of websites from other clients and projects in here, so you might not have anything because you just signed up. I'm going to scroll to the very, very bottom, and it says, want to deploy a new site without connecting to Git, which we'll get into Git down the road. Drag and drop your site folder here. If we look at that public folder, that is where our static files or our build files actually live. I'm going to drag public, maybe, let's try it again, right here, drag and drop into Git. It's going to upload the files, and just like that, I'm going to change this so you can actually see what I'm working on. I'm going to click on the word site settings. Actually, it should be site settings. I was thinking two different things. And by default, it just makes up a random site name. So as long as no one else has it, I will say my very first Gatsby website. Did anyone take it? No one took it. Yay! I have now my very first Gatsby website.netlify.com. And if you're watching this video, you can navigate to that page. Oh, check it out. This is a paragraph. Your very first Gatsby edit. So on the surface, we did a lot of work to write this little bit of code, or just one sentence. But what you'll find, and we'll get into more of these in future tutorials, that it's very, very, very powerful. This is just step one in like 500 different steps we can take with Gatsby. What I want to know is, did you do this? Did you get to this? I'd love to hear a comment and paste your link. If you've got this far on Netlify, it might be a first sentence, but that's awesome. Copy and paste your URL, which you got for free on Netlify, to the comment section. I'd love to hear you did this. Did you get tripped up? What happened? I'm really, really curious how this all works. In future videos, we're going to get deeper and deeper into Gatsby and focus on the design and the usability and the UX and all of that. But pat yourself on the back. This was a long video, and yes, it was not fast at the first time, but it's going to get faster and faster and faster as we go along. Once again, my name is Haydn Adams with A Designer That Codes. If you feel like giving this some love, give it a thumbs up. And if you feel like giving it some extra love, hit that subscribe button so every time I come out with a new tutorial video on coding for design on the web, you'll be notified. And with that, thank you very much for watching.